I'm ready when you guys are.
Okay. Well, thank you, Abby, for meeting with us today. I want to say, first off, sorry for pestering you. I know that you've had some stuff going on, and I
Not
felt
at
so
all.
bad being like, but you know.
No,
I'm
I'm glad you called.
But you are a really important piece in this story that we're wanting to do. And
Okay.
so I want to say thank you for taking
Yes.
the time to meet with us today. So first off, can I get you to please say and spell your first and last name?
It's Abby, A-B-B-Y, Reed, R-E-E-D.
And what is your title?
Well, I mean, my career choice is I'm a nurse. I'm a registered nurse.
Okay.
And then I do a lot of volunteer work on the side, so I don't know that I have an official title per se,
Okay.
except I maybe just call myself a homeless advocate.
Okay. And so how did you first get involved in providing care to people experiencing homelessness?
So I've been a nurse now for about 22 years. And not long after I first became a nurse, and I was living in Oklahoma City at the time, I went on a medical mission trip. And I loved that. And I came home and I went, well, we can't do missions every single day, medical missions in another country. It didn't fit me. But I had such a desire to help and to serve others. And so I started searching for what are the needs locally. And I immediately found an opportunity working as a nurse at the homeless shelter there in Oklahoma City at City Rescue Mission. And that just started my new purpose to be able to serve a population of people that I feel like are misunderstood and underserved. And it's just continued until today.
And when we are talking about the lack of access to critical care resources for these people, what is critical care? What health conditions fall under kind of that definition or that umbrella?
Well, for you and me, we are generally able to go and see a healthcare provider. We can go and we can have our routine follow-ups, right? We're not feeling good. We can call and get in and have an appointment. And that doesn't happen so easily whenever you're homeless. And there's a lot of different factors that play into that. So what I see ends up happening in our homeless population is they may have, let's say, a wound come up on their leg where you and I would look down and go, ooh, that's starting to look bad. I better call Dr. Smith. And the homeless don't always have that opportunity. So they let it go and go and go until they get so sick, they end up in the hospital now septic and severely ill because of a smaller injury that we could have taken care of from the get-go. So I think they don't always have access to maybe what I would call urgent care, where I have an accident that happened, have a wound, can I come in and see you? And they don't always have access to that routine maintenance care where we just take care of our underlying health problems and we make sure that our blood pressure is staying, taken care of. And so sometimes then when they go into the hospital for one small wound, let's say, they walk out and now they've got 5 or 6 new diagnoses because they haven't been able to go and receive that routine maintenance care.
And for people maybe who might have some idea that they have these health conditions, what barriers do they come across when trying to get care? Or what barriers do they experience if something immediately pops up, for
Right.
instance?
Well, there's a couple of different key factors here. One of which is their belongings, for example. When you asked me to meet with you today, I was able to walk away from my house, leave my belongings at home, and come and meet you. It wasn't a problem. However, if you stop and think about it for the homeless, and you can sometimes picture, you see them maybe on the side, and they have a buggy that's got their belongings in it, and some have a pet. Well, now I made an appointment for you to go see Dr. Smith today, and I need you to ride the bus, the transit bus, over to his office. Well, they can't take their buggy on the bus. They can't take their belongings. They can't take their pet. And a lot of times if they choose to leave their belongings, sitting in a certain place, for different reasons, those things disappear. Whether it be somebody takes them or whether it be somebody comes by to clean things up and things disappear. So then a lot of times they opt to go, no, I'm gonna stay and keep my things and I'll go to the emergency room when I get really bad. So that is one problem. Another problem that I have found is there's been a few people I've made an appointment for them. I need you to go and see the doctor today for this problem. And we think we've got it set right. Your appointment today is at 11 o'clock on Monday. Well, Monday comes and Guyon Saunders is one wonderful resource, and it's open Monday through Friday usually, and it serves a hot meal. Well, that meal's served at noon. Well, I've been outside on the street all weekend, right? Maybe haven't had a hot meal, and now the meal's going to be served at noon. So if I leave and go to my appointment today at 11, I'm going to miss my meal. Well, for you and me, we might think, okay, well, you can get a meal when you get back. Well, it doesn't really work that way. They get one hot meal, guaranteed meal a day. They may have other people that come by and give them snacks and things like that, but the one hot meal is guaranteed at noon. And so sometimes they're in a situation where I have to make a decision. And we all remember back in high school we talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and those needs go back to what is my most immediate need. And food and shelter fall under those needs. So for me today, I'm going to choose to eat a hot meal, and I'll make up that appointment at a later date. So sometimes it's simple things that maybe if we had a better understanding of homelessness and some of those barriers, perhaps we could work around them a little better. So now when I schedule an appointment, I try to do it later in the afternoon, like around 2 or 3 o'clock. So then they can get into Guyon Saunders in the morning if they come. They can get breakfast. They can get out of the elements for a little bit. They can maybe get their load of laundry started. They can eat lunch. Well, then they're a little bit more prepared and willing to go to that doctor's appointment, because it kind of falls a little further down the list to them. And I can understand that now that I have been a part of the homeless arena a little bit longer. I've begun to better understand why they make some of the decisions they do.
There are a few resources that I think are trying to meet the needs of people experiencing homelessness or lower income. So some of the ones that I think we've heard: Heal the City, RHN, some resources at Guyon Saunders, and then the JOY clinic.
Yes.
To your knowledge, do any of these area resources have qualifications people must meet to get care?
Well, of course, there's an application process. And now I would like to make it clear I don't represent any of those agencies. So if I misspeak, please forgive me. But the best of my understanding is specifically with Heal the City and JOY, yes, there is an application process. And we do run into some challenges. Sometimes they want them to have a home address. And often they've been able to use 200 South Tyler for Guyon Saunders as that address. And lately, that's been more challenging. They have not wanted that to be the address. Well, they need to be able to use something. So that's been a barrier. We have also run into the fact that we might go to this agency to apply, and they want us to go to this one first, go through this process. If they deny us, then you can come back here. And if you stop and think, they often don't have a car. They often need help because maybe they don't know how to answer all of those questions. Maybe they don't even have the paperwork, such as their IDs. We can sometimes get a copy of an old ID so that we can get that going for them. But it can be a very cumbersome and sometimes not humiliating, but intimidating process. And if I go here and I work through all of this process and then they tell me, no, you're denied, and then I've got to go and start it over here, they do they get frustrated, and sometimes, like I told you, I'm going to waste this time, or I could come over here and I can eat and I can do my laundry and I can do some other things over here. So sometimes the process itself is challenging for them. And then I think that we could begin to work together a little bit better to help the homeless, to help them fill out the applications, to make it a little bit more accessible to them, and to help them better understand what the agency needs from them. But I would also encourage them to better understand what the homeless are needing from said agency.
And when people run into some of these barriers with the ID, the paperwork, maybe just not fully understanding what they're asking of them, what happens to people who don't qualify or they don't have any other ways of getting care? What do they do?
What a lot of them end up doing is just waiting until they're so sick that they have to go to the emergency room. And you and I know that's not ideal, that's not the optimal situation. But when you're forced to pick and choose, at least they know that they'll be able to get care if they need to in an emergency situation. So what my goal has been is to help them better understand that there are ways that we can find you that routine maintenance care, and there are better ways that we can get you, the follow-up care you need. Sometimes what I see is they've been in the hospital, for example, for an extended stay, and they come out of the hospital and they have a stack of paperwork. Well, sometimes even I'm overwhelmed, right? You get out and I'm like, oh my goodness, what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to call this place, and now I need to call this doctor. And then here's a stack of prescriptions. Well, I don't have money to go get those prescriptions filled. And so sometimes they just stuff the papers away and they just go on their way because they don't know what to do. However, some of them have started asking questions and they've started asking for help. And so we're trying to do better about helping them to get to those follow-up appointments, because sometimes in those follow-up appointments, then we are able to get them established, maybe with a primary care physician, or maybe some extended wound care services that they did need coming out of the hospital. But there's so many times that they leave the hospital with a stack of prescriptions. And for example, I can think of a particular gentleman that's been living down at Transformation Park, and he had a stroke, got discharged. Rather than going to rehab because he didn't have insurance, he ended up at Transformation Park. And because he did not get those prescriptions filled, he ended up having 2 more strokes in the meantime before we were aware that he needed those prescriptions filled. He went back to the hospital 2 more times. And so sometimes that lack of communication and that lack of extended care, taking the time on discharge to make sure, are you going to be able to get these prescriptions? And do you understand the significance of those prescriptions? Sometimes we don't quite understand that this is life or death. If you don't take this blood thinning medication, you might have another stroke. And had there been better communication, had he better understood, and had he had somebody to go to and say, I need help with these prescriptions, perhaps we could have prevented 2 more strokes from occurring.
In your opinion, from your experience, what you've seen and what you've heard from people that you've worked with, what do you feel is needed to help address the issue of lack of access to care?
That's a loaded question, but I've thought about it extensively. One aspect, as a nurse, when we're work for a facility and I work for a hospital, we undergo training that helps us understand different cultures, right? So I can better understand different cultures that may be living within our community. And what I would like to see is I would like to see a better understanding of what homelessness is and what it is not. I do think there are some perceived misconceptions about the homeless. They're lazy. They just don't care. And, perhaps there's an individual out there who that might fit, but I don't like stereotypes. And I would like there to be a better understanding of what leads to homelessness and what some of their barriers are in getting to healthcare services. And I think if healthcare as a whole better understood homelessness, I think it might change our attitude when a homeless person came in. And when I was discharging that person, maybe I would ask just a couple more questions just to make sure. Now, do you truly understand? Do you truly have access to get these prescriptions filled? And if you don't, let me help you. Let me find a way to make sure that you get these critical medications. I think that's a very important aspect right there. And now I forgot the question. Say the question one more time. Because it was a part one.
What you've seen,
Yes.
what do you feel is needed to help address
Yes.
the issue?
I think understanding, so education and understanding is very crucial. I think we need more volunteers. We need more people that are willing to come. I have found many of my homeless friends, they don't value themselves. They've been through a lot of trauma in their life that has led to their homelessness, and they just don't value themselves as a human being. And sometimes, well, why am I going to go? Why would I go to that appointment? Why am I going to do that follow-up? You know, they just don't feel that they're worthy. They don't feel that it matters. It's not going to make a difference. And we're trying to find more people willing to invest in our homeless individuals to help them understand you do matter. You are important. And part of what that does is we're trying to bridge the gap between our homeless and the rest of the community to help pull them back into becoming, I guess the term I like to use is functional members of society, because they're over here and they feel disconnect. We don't matter. We are outcasts, and you know, we are undeserving. And that is not true, because there's so many reasons why they have ended up in homelessness, and so many of those reasons certainly were not their fault. And so I feel like we as a society, we as healthcare, we as the faith-based community, we need to better bridge that gap to help those individuals see their worth, see that they are human beings and they do matter, and start investing just small amounts of our time to help them better understand you can overcome, you can become a part of society again. We can help you through this, and you matter. And that's sometimes what volunteering shows, is you mattered enough that I'm going to spend my time today to come and take care of you.
Why do you think that there's kind of this lack of volunteers?
I really think a lot of it is misunderstanding. I think these stereotypes, we think we understand why people are on the corner. We think we understand what they're doing. And of course, there's always going to be that person that takes advantage of any given situation. Of course there is. But what I have found is, as I have sat and talked with these individuals and I have gotten to know you as a person, sometimes the trauma and the stories and what they have lived through and endured, I understand why they're on the streets. I really do. A lot of people don't have that extended family. They don't have a close-knit group of people that will come around them and say, I want to help you. I'm going to help you get through this situation. You know, we've all heard the term, we're all just maybe 1 or 2 paychecks, you know, from being homeless. And, you know, I just had an accident myself, and I've been off work for 3 or 4 weeks. And you know, to be honest, if my parents weren't able to come beside me and say, we've got you for a little bit, it's okay, I can understand how easily one accident, one car accident, one extended illness, and that loss of paycheck, and then you miss your rent, you get kicked out of where you live. Well, now I'm on the street, so if I try to go back to work, but yet I can't really take a shower and get ready to go to work, it just begins that cycle, and that cycle can bring them to such a point of depression, it's really hard to pull yourself back up. So as we bring more education, such as you guys, in asking these hard questions, I'm hoping that more people in the community will start to see that we can all be a part of the solution here.
Is there anything else that you would like to add or talk about that maybe we haven't mentioned yet?
No, I think you've asked very good questions. I think I would just encourage everybody to dig deep down in their heart and us to throw away those stereotypes. And, you know, sometimes even just this winter as you see people outside and you don't know their situation, and sometimes I say, does it really matter if we know how they got there? At least consider maybe carrying some snacks in your car. I keep little bags in my car that have toiletries and some non-perishable snacks. You don't have to give them money, but sometimes just giving somebody a blanket or giving them some snacks just to say, hey, it's pretty cold out here and I see you, that makes a big difference. So I just want to challenge everybody to at least consider stretching themselves a little bit and going outside of their comfort zone to maybe care on somebody that maybe they haven't noticed before.
Do you have anything?
No, that was great.
That was
Thank you.
good.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any trash talk for anybody?
Actually, and that's why I had to be so careful because